We will just jump in.
Great.
All right, we are live.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Kay Stewart. I am the Vet Tech CPCN at Feed Real Institute, and I am starting this series of lives with a good friend of mine, Alisha, and she is from Empawthy out in San Francisco.
Yes.
Alisha and I have a long history, and I'm going to give you her bio real quick. Her first experience was with her own dog back in her teens. It was a very reactive Shetland sheepdog, and that encouraged her to go on to college to become a veterinarian. She went to the University of Notre Dame, and that is where our story starts, because I was her mentor at the University of Notre Dame, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into it. But she soon realized, working with veterinary staff, that the nursing aspect was more her vibe. So she went on to become a vet tech and worked for, 20 years as a vet tech in research.
Yes.
And then she shifted.
I don't typically tell people.
I know, but you can tell me, and I do tell people.
Yes.
Then in 2014, she shifted to dog training, which is amazing. And from there, she went to the dog training internship academy, and she's worked with Karen Pryor. She has worked at SF Puppy Prep and taught 3 years at the SPCA there. And then she is, like me, a continuing education junkie. So we're constantly learning, which is awesome. Her new business, like I said, is Empawthy. And she's a trainer for dogs in the Bay Area, training them, but also their humans, I think, is probably more what you're training as much as the dogs. And so we're going to jump right in. We have a great conversation that we're going to talk to her about her dog, Civetta. I just had to ask her how you say the name. And she's a little Papillon.
Yes.
And that she got, 2.5 years, 3 years ago?
I got her right when the pandemic started.
Yeah.
So I
Almost 4
flew
years
to
then.
Washington in February of 2020, which seems crazy now.
Yeah, right. Yes, I remember I was supposed to fly to LA in March 2020 and was not able to go. So I get that. And so let's start with how we met.
Yes.
Back in, what year did you graduate from Notre Dame?
So I was there in 91,
Okay.
and I thought I wanted to be a vet. And I guess probably in 92 or 93, I started realizing there were no animal coursework available. And I was taking what I could. I took animal behavior, and now I look back at that and I wish I would have just become a behaviorist then. But I needed more animal experience. And I remember seeing a flyer in the hallway for the Fryman Life Science. You guys were having an open house.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I went to the open house, but I remember realizing, ooh, there's animals here. And I remember going over the river and through the woods and finding you. And I remember going into your office and introducing myself and saying that I wanted help learning about animals. And you were kind of taken aback, because I think I was the first one that had said, because, all the Notre Dame people, they all wanted to be doctors.
Right.
But what was really cool was you totally shifted gears and started looking for ways. And then we started finding other people. We found Bronwyn and Lisa. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, you realized that in order for us to apply to veterinary school, we were going to need a nutrition course. And why don't you tell us about that course?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's so funny that you say 91, because that period between 91 and 96, when I had 2 kids under the age of 5, is so vague to me. I hardly remember it. I mean, of course I remember you, but that's why I said, what year was it? Because it was really hard. And so you're right. All of the advisors would tell any students wanting to be veterinarians, your parents sent you here to be doctors, not animal doctors. And they literally said, what do you want to be, Dr. Doolittle, kind of thing. And so I had to fight with the advisors to get you guys some classes, just some things that we could do. And they soon just said, just take it over. And so I became the pre-vet advisor, which then morphed into having a club and all that. So basically, Alisha is the one that started all that for the Notre Dame students. And to this day, it's still going on. So I was at Notre Dame until 2017. And yes, I was the advisor to the pre-vets, but my primary job was running the animal research facilities. And that's what she was saying, the Freiman Life Science Center. We were tucked away on purpose because there's a lot of people that didn't want research to be going on. And so that's why it was hard for us to be found. So like Alisha said, one of the things that the vet schools wanted to see is some nutrition. And Notre Dame didn't have any animal nutrition courses. So I found a course online. But for you, I think we just did the workbooks through Hills or Purina, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there were
they
courses that you could
Purina.
take
They
through
were
Purina
Yep.
that would get her enough credit, if you will, with the vet schools to have nutrition. Later on, I was able to find some online actual animal nutrition classes through like Purdue or Oklahoma State. There were several that the students could take and I could mentor or proctor. So, but having said that, she got it through Purina. So guess what kind of nutrition she was indoctrinated into right away.
Kibble is how you feed all animals. Kibble.
Absolutely. And in vet tech training, the same thing. And so you ended up going down to Purdue for your vet tech, right?
Well, I went to Purdue, but I ran out of money really fast.
Yeah.
And so I dropped out after 2 semesters. And then a lot of people from Notre Dame had moved to San Francisco, and I had friends that had an empty room. So I moved out here and I shopped my resume around and I landed a job at Genentech. And so I worked at Genentech for 6 years and had wonderful mentors. I'm so grateful. And so many of my mentors are still friends with me on Facebook. I was there for about 5.5 years. And then my favorite veterinarian left and went to Stanford. So because she left, I left, went to UCSF. That wasn't a love connection. But meanwhile, my favorite vet at Stanford recruited me. I went down there. So by working at Genentech, UCSF, and Stanford, everything you're always taught is do it to the animal, don't hurt the animal, don't hurt yourself. Yeah. And I have really felt strongly, and again, you feel the same way, we do animal research so that people benefit from medical advancement. And my goal was always, I want to treat the animals with kindness because I'm the only humans they get to meet. But I also felt very strongly that the research needs to be done well. I then went to a startup for 8 years, but somewhere in there, I just decided, I don't want to do this anymore. And again, I feel very passionately about the animals that I helped.
Right.
But I just decided that, and it's one of these, once you realize it, you can't go back. I realized that they don't have a choice.
Right.
And so I left and I thought I would go work at my wife's restaurant. Mm-hmm. And then, so random, I flew on a flight at Christmas and a woman next to me had a service dog and it was really lovely. And I got to pet the service dog during the flight. And then we got off the flight and the next flight we had was delayed for 8 hours. Gosh. And I sat in such afterglow from that dog that I didn't care. And we sat in Las Vegas for 8 hours. And my wife turned to me and she said, I know you think food is where you should go. You really need to explore your connection with animals. And so I always say, let that misfortune be your good fortune. So I came back after Christmas. SPCA was hiring. I got a job. Puppy Prep was hiring. I got a job. And so 2014, I just dove into dog training. Mm-hmm. And as they say, when Harry met Sally, once you figure out what you want for the rest of your life, you want the rest of your life to start right now.
Right.
So I just dove in and did DTIA. And, I did the Karen Pryor program. And once I got all my certification, I started teaching.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what's funny is how we ended up reconnecting again. I mean, we never really lost total touch with each other.
I would see you at the conferences.
Right.
I saw you in San Diego that year. Mm-hmm. Like we saw each other.
Right.
And it's also, I don't want this to be too much about lab animal research, but I also just want to say, I feel like lab animal research is as controversial as fresh food diets.
Yes.
And that I never talked about what I did. And now I think I can't not talk about dogs.
Right.
But I feel like talking about fresh food is as difficult as talking about lab animals.
It can definitely be as difficult. And I made that comparison before that I always have to gauge my audience when I'm in the room. And how you start the conversation about fresh food is, you know, the same way that we did with working in research. You gauge the audience, you see where they're at, and you meet them there, and then you go forward. That's what I do with the fresh food conversations. And it's really interesting because if you meet them at, yes, I understand why you feed kibble, and you go from there, they're not feeling attacked. And that's how we need to approach the fresh food conversations. So tell us a little bit about your...
Hold on, going back. So why did you and I reconnect? Because this is what's exciting. Is that you left Notre Dame?
Yeah, I was gonna say, which part? Yeah. So when I left Notre Dame, I was floundering. I didn't know. I mean, after 32 years, they ended my job, and so I had to reevaluate. And again, when you were saying, like, I didn't want to go back into research. I had been very misaligned for so long, and it was really one of those that the blessing in disguise. Like, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And I reevaluated everything in my life and found this job with the Feed Real Institute. And I not only reconnected with you, but also with Dr. Katie Woodley, who was one of my students at Notre Dame also.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? No?
No.
Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. She was one of my Notre Dame students too. In fact, I'm the one that encouraged her to go to vet school in New Zealand. And so, yes. Cool. So it's been so fun connecting with people and, you know, watching everything come full circle from getting out of the academic world, but really back into it in the sense that I'm the researcher and writer. And so Alisha and I reconnected and have been talking a lot since we got this job reconnection because of her dog and transitioning her dog to fresh food. And I want everybody to understand the story that you have gone through in order to get your dog onto fresh food, all the issues, and the fact that it's a toy breed. You know, we take for granted that our dogs can have a few extra calories here and there, but watching Alisha go through all this with her little toy breed, you know, it's so easy for those dogs to gain weight. And there's so many issues with toy breeds that, you know, unless you've had one, you just don't understand. So she's got some really good insights with that.
So where do you want me to go with this?
Start with how you got.
Okay. So again, going back to every misfortune can be a good fortune. I taught at the SPCA for 3 years, and then kind of like you, they ended my job, my department. And I applied to another job and I didn't get it because I didn't have a dog. And so then I decided, okay. And part of the reason why I didn't have a dog is because I worked so much. I was teaching 8 classes a week. So when I decided I wanted a dog, I had 4 criteria. I wanted a dog that would be a training machine with me, would play with my wife, would not be a threat to the cat, and would not be a threat to the public. Because my day job is walking reactive dogs. And most of the dogs that are my favorite dogs are ones that bite people. So I really wanted my nervous system to have a break.
Yeah.
And I decided on the Papillon, located an ethical breeder meaning someone who breeds for temperament, health, and structure. I could see many of her dogs online. And when I contacted her, I wanted a puppy, but I said I wanted an energetic, enthusiastic female that will want to do all the things with me. And she said, I actually have a retired show dog who was only 10 months, but she wasn't show quality, it turned out. But she said she fit the criteria. So even though I didn't want an adolescent, I wanted to raise a puppy, I took this dog. I fly to Washington State, February of 2020. Again, crazy. So just to be clear, picked up the dog Valentine's Day, lockdown happened St. Patrick's Day. But the first thing I wanted was to feed raw. And so Casey at SF Raw is such a wonderful person. And literally it's like, get off the plane. We're going to SF Raw. I'm going to have a raw fed dog. Yeah. And unfortunately, through whatever reason, my dog is very particular about smells and textures. And unfortunately, despite my best attempts, raw food is not for her. Then pandemic hits. So now we're kind of all locked up. But I continue to try to convince my dog. And I literally created a food phobia. To this day, if we are going to introduce a novel food to the dog, my wife does it. Because she kept saying, no, thank you. And I kept saying, yeah, but.
Hmm.
She kept saying, no, thank you. And I kept saying, yeah, but.
Yeah.
And I think of it like, if you say you don't like onions, and if I keep trying to get you to like onions, you eventually don't want to eat my food.
Exactly.
So that is the first mistake I made. And whenever I encourage my clients to go slow with food, I tell them, my dog
Listen.
wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
My dog
Listen
wouldn't.
to your dog. Yeah.
She didn't
Listen.
listen. I didn't listen to her. So, and then it's the pandemic and everything's a nightmare and you're afraid to go buy anything. So, long story short, she went on Ziwi Peak and she didn't love it, but it was at least food.
Right.
And we would kind of go between that. And, I would try to buy Evermore and I try to, buy, whatever, all the good ones. And she didn't want it. And again, I'm going to be honest, it was embarrassing. And I didn't want to talk about it. But again, like we could do trick training and, we did all kinds of training, but I didn't revisit the kibble issue until I met Ruby. And then Ruby was the one that gave me the kickstart. So that's kind of the story of how I really messed up my dog.
Yeah.
Messed up my relationship.
Right. So how did you eventually get her to eat? So she doesn't eat raw, but she eats
will not
fresh
eat raw
food.
to this day. And the cat's on raw. So again, once we did get the dog on a fresh food diet, then and the cat took 6 months. Okay. But the cat is now on SF raw food, and they make this amazing chicken. So every day we give the dog a chance to lick the cat spoon, and she says no. That's so amazing. What we eventually decided, and again, this was working with you and Ruby and Real Dog Box and Casey. I sous vide her food. So I buy everything at SF Raw, and SF Raw, if you don't know, it's amazing. It's like a meat co-op, and it's like the most amazing thing ever. It has everything under the sun. So we are, I sous vide at about 140 degrees. So it's recognizing that 150 is the cutoff.
Right.
If you cook over 150 degrees, that's when you're going to really start having more nutrient loss. So I sous vide. We're basically kind of doing kind of a venison turkey. Those are pretty good for her. Beef does not work for her. And again, I'm trying to limit the calories. So I'm kind of trying to avoid pork.
Yeah.
And then I will, so I'll sous vide the kidney. I dehydrate pancreas, spleen, and liver, and I sous vide gizzards and hearts. Nice. So in general, so the meal that you and I have finally come up with is venison and turkey, the kidney and, pancreas, spleen, liver. We're doing healthy powder from SF Raw. We're doing psyllium husk for fiber. And I just started putting in a tiny bit of juju greens. She also wants nothing to do with fruits and vegetables. Every now and then I'll get her to eat some sauteed mushrooms. But anyway, it has been such a journey because also a lot of times once I found what she wanted, I overfed her. Once I figured out that she would eat a dehydrated chicken wing, I overfed her. Because again, you're so worried when you have a toy breed, you're not feeding them enough. And this is the thing I'm just really angry about, is that we have been told we don't know how to feed our animals. And then we're so worried they're not going to get enough calcium. Right. They're not going to get enough this. And you're so paranoid that you overfeed. And then you came in and you're like, no. And again, Casey did it too. So again, Casey, I know you told me. But you guys, literally, she needs 2 grams of dehydrated liver a day.
Yeah. 2 grams, people. 2 grams.
She needs 5 grams of kidney a day.
Yeah.
She needs right now about 110 grams.
That's amazing.
So just for everyone to understand, 30 grams is an ounce.
Yeah.
So literally, I have an ounce of food for training.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that I was working on reactivity training. I was working on cooperative care. We have gone to national competitions for the North American Sport Dog Association. So every chance I got, I was trying to limit the food, but I needed food to build these behaviors and also work with activity training.
That's amazing. So you use almost all of her food for training, correct? You
well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, right now, so again, like she needs about 100 grams of muscle meat a day. I'm doing 60 grams in her meal. Okay. And then what I do is, so basically I'm kind of making my own ancestral meatball. And so each meatball is 38 grams. And then that 38 gram meatball. So again, think like, this big, the 38 gram meatball, I break that up into 4 portions. And I was using topples, but now I don't want her to lose any food. So I basically have these little plastic plates and she goes to her crate and then I hide the 4 plastic plates around the house. So they're not real plastic. They're like bamboo. But again, so we're not using plastic, but they're not like, China. But anyway, bamboo plates. I put the 4 plates around the house, and then she has to find her food.
Okay. And that is amazing, because that's enrichment along with feeding. And that, again, it shows you what you can do with even a very small amount of food. So those of us that are feeding, 10 ounces of food a day, imagine what we could do.
So jealous.
Yeah. You're so jealous.
I was all excited because they're like, oh, you have a toy breed, you can feed them anything. Meaning that, yeah, I can afford to feed her steak, but I don't have any food. And then, God forbid, my wife is sharing her breakfast with her. And I'm like, oh my God, you just gave her 20 grams.
You just gave her half of her daily allowance.
Are there any questions? How are we doing this with Facebook Live? Is this?
I don't see any questions coming through.
Okay.
Anybody that wants to come through? Oh, wait a minute. We do have comments over here. Yeah, we don't have any comments yet. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, please pop them in, because otherwise we're just going to chat forever.
Chat about the dog. What else do you want to? I mean, we can talk about training. We can talk about reactivity. We can talk about my mentors.
Yeah. So basically, I really like how you're using food for training. And I think everybody thinks that that's the only way dogs learn, is through training with food. But yeah, how are other ways that we can use food, but you don't have to?
Yeah. So what happened was, I didn't want a reactive dog, because I have, I do all this reactivity training. So when I identified the breeder had the 10-month-old dog, I made her take all these videos at dog shows. So I could see my dog was incredibly neutral to the public. But I live in the Mission District of San Francisco. So within 3 months of her getting here, we got ambushed on the front steps of my house. We're walking out the front door. We're on a Victorian, so we're up at the top of stairs. A woman with 2 reactive, a min pin and a terrier, comes around the corner. They see us. They go crazy. They come running. She drops the flexies. They come clattering up the front steps of my house. We go running in the house.
Oh, gosh.
But dogs are single event learners. And if something traumatic happens, think back when you were 13 years old. If you walked out and if you got ambushed on the front steps of your house when you were 13 years old, which is what a 13-month-old dog is, think about how much therapy you're going to do.
Yeah.
So I have spent years convincing my dog the world is safe. And so part of what you've always been told is, there's a monster, here's a cookie. There's a monster, here's a cookie. Well, here's the thing. If you and I are out walking, and if I see someone that I'm afraid of, do you say shut up and eat a Snickers bar?
Exactly.
No. If you take your grandchildren to the circus and they do not like the clown, you do not get closer to the clown. You do not take a photo with the clown. You do not invite the clown to babysit. You leave and you go get ice cream, and you don't worry that you're reinforcing the fear. You want to make sure you don't build a clown phobia. So again, a lot of it in the beginning was, there's a dog, here's a cookie. There's a dog, here's a cookie. But it wasn't working. It's not the answer to the question. So then I recruit Amy Cook. So Amy Cook is Fenzi Dog Sports Academy. And I had done her classes before, but now I'm doing a class with my own dog. So she has a wonderful sound sensitivity class. She has a wonderful play class called Dealing with the Boogeyman. And she has a wonderful management for reactive dogs. So it's really understanding that part of it is we need to prevent the dog from getting stressed. And we need to start asking the dog, can you do this with me instead? And so it's really, again, starting to ask the dog, what makes you feel better? So definitely it could be, I see that dog over there. Can you jump up on these stairs? And it's understanding that if you identify what makes the dog feel better, keeps them safe, it's self-reinforcing. So my dog firmly believes if we are out on the beach and she sees a dog she doesn't want to talk to, she firmly believes if she jumps up on that rock, she won't have to meet the dog, and everyone laughs. But think about it. If you're looking for a parking space and you can't find one, and you do the sign of the cross, that's what superstition is. So it's understanding that Amy Cook helped me learn, but also Amy in the sound sensitivity class, she basically wants you to build what's called a noise party. And it's basically identifying what is an activity you can do with your dog for about 60 seconds that makes them happy. And so Amy, and I was in the class at the silver level, so I was able to supply videos. And she's like, it doesn't have to be food. So it can be toys. It can be any kind of play. And so that's when I started realizing that the flirt pole and the tug toy were just as valuable as food. And again, when you've got a toy breed, you can't be using food every time they get upset.
Yeah,
so
that's
then
for sure.
so then it was with Amy, I started doing toys and then activities. But then I started realizing the value of these activities. And then I started moving into cooperative care. And then that's Deb Jones. So Deb Jones is also Fenzi Dog Sports. And I love Deb Jones. And I say all the time, if I had known Deb Jones when I started my vet tech career, I might still be doing it. Because Deb is really about agency and autonomy. And Deb let me workshop a lot of ideas with Civetta. And Deb has a lot of really clear rules about like, you should have a grooming table. So you should have a separate space for grooming. So the dog knows what they're doing. And so you don't poison the environment.
Nice.
But because I am a 20-year vet tech and because I'm wildly curious to know what can I do with my dog, we do our cooperative care on the couch.
Right.
Deb and I are very clear. I am breaking all the rules. However, she has also agreed that what I have accomplished with our dog, having cooperative care be a daily conversation of, do you want to do your nails?
Right.
Do you want to comb? And based on the work that she let me workshop, and again, every time my dog had a medical emergency, and we can get into that, I would demonstrate what I could do. And so again, Deb was incredibly gracious because again, I broke her rules. But she let me workshop it. And so I started realizing that, okay, yeah, I have this roast chicken. So I ate this dinner and my dog wants my food. But I can't just be trim a nail chicken, trim a nail chicken, trim a nail chicken, trim a nail chicken, and have that be enough. So instead it was, we would trim one paw with the chicken, but then we played games afterwards. So again, my dog likes to look for her meals, but I also have Velcro toys, toilet paper rolls, egg cartons. And what I started realizing was, yeah, you got a piece of chicken for every nail. But when we finish the paw, now we're going to go find the Velcro toy with mommy's dinner.
Yeah.
And that is when I started getting my dog to volunteer.
That's amazing.
Because life is just one big game show.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that you're playing for fabulous prizes and adventures. So to be clear, 3 puzzle toys is good. 5 puzzle toys is better.
Yeah.
8 puzzle toys is amazing. But it's always the same amount of food.
Okay.
You just have to spend more time looking for it.
I see. So when you've talked about a lot that she's had some major issues, and I know one of them was that she had to have a dental.
Yes.
And I'd like you to talk about how that came about.
Yes.
And what, because we talk about raw food being so good for their oral health. And I don't think you were feeding raw meaty bones at that point because she wouldn't eat them, right?
Well, so a couple different things.
Okay.
First of all, she was on kibble. Let's say she was on kibble till she was 3.
Right.
So we've got 3 years of kibble. So what we don't realize, and so again, let's be very clear, people, we have taken, ancestors of the wolf and shrunk it down into a tiny package. And they still have 42 pearly whites. But those teeth are like sunflower seeds. So let's face it, even if we're brushing their teeth, we're kidding ourselves. We brush our teeth and we still get tartar buildup. So how do we think that brushing their teeth is going to make any kind of difference?
Right.
So it's understanding that I realized that toy breeds are at risk for dental health, but I kept putting it off. And my vet had said, she's got a couple loose teeth. But part of my thing has always been, I don't want my dog to go under for anesthesia any more than we have to. So I kind of hoped like, okay, we got her on fresh food. We've got her chewing on dehydrated chicken wings. But then I went to the Feed Real conference, the Feed Real Summit in October. Can you remind me of the really wonderful vet who had done a lot of dental work? And she just turned to the audience. Was it Katie?
It was Katie Kangas, Dr. Katie Kangas. Yes.
So I think they were doing the panel. It wasn't even a talk, but they were doing the panel. And she turned to us and she said, if you have a toy breed dog and you haven't done a dental, you're kidding yourself. And that's the kind of information I need. I need someone to say, get over yourself.
Yeah.
So I literally flew home from San Diego, called my vet. And thank God they had one for that Thursday. So I brought her in and he calls me from the dental and he says, do you want to go high or go low? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I could save some of the teeth or I could take them out now. And I said, oh, take them now. You guys, my dog lost 11 teeth.
Wow.
my dog lost 11 teeth and I didn't know it. So again, I am here to say, I am obsessed with this dog, but I thought when she stopped chewing on stuff, she wasn't interested. I thought when she shrieked, when my wife was playing tug, that my wife was playing roughly. I thought that her inability to settle at night was because she was a hyper dog.
Yeah.
So I'm here to say again, we all do the best we can with the information we have.
Right.
But I didn't even post about it on Instagram for like a month. I was so embarrassed. So ashamed.
Yeah.
But
you know what you know when you know it, and it's a journey for all of us. And so you went through this entire journey with getting her to eat the fresh food, and then realizing with the toy breeds. And so to go back to that, the toy breeds, like you said, still have the same number of teeth as a, Rottweiler or all these big ones. And their teeth are just so compacted in there, not much space in between. And they are very, very prone to oral health problems. And so I think it's a really, really key issue with all dogs, obviously, but with the toy breeds, because of the size of the mouth and the way the teeth are just jammed in there, we have to make sure those dogs have good oral health.
We have to get them off kibble.
Yeah, it really is what starts the whole body's health. If the mouth is messed up. Right.
Yeah. So one of the pet summits, I can't even remember which one now, but Emily of Teef, T-E-F. So Teef is a product where you put it in the water, and it's to create a biofilm that helps protect your dog from building up bad bacteria, basically.
And the really exciting thing is she's our next live in 2 weeks.
Oh, sweet. Oh, well, he's a hero. So for Christmas, we got the Teef subscription. So basically what's nice about it is it's a very tiny spoon, and I add it. So I give her a fresh bowl of water, and I have a stainless steel bowl, and we scrub it out every day. My dog likes her water better. So if you use Teef, and if your dog is drinking more, you may want to consider a Teef water bowl and then a separate water bowl. Because I had one of my clients has a Yorkie, and she felt like she was drinking too much water. And I said, well, then just give her some Teef and some normal water. Right. But she likes it. I'm able to then also, when she at Christmas, she went to the dog sitter, and the dog sitter was more than happy to do that.
Right.
And then we're doing turkey tendons because it's a lightweight chew. And then again, I have SF raw. So I'm really happy. I'm able to buy raw. I get like duck feet, chicken feet, and trachea, and I dehydrate it myself. And that's what those are her chews.
Okay. And so how do you think that the dental health, have you kept
I look at her and I'm not seeing big things of tartar, but more importantly, what I like is that I wake up in the middle of the night and she's chewing on a trachea. That's what makes me happy. And that, again, I thought she wasn't chewing because she just didn't want it.
And so now she's chewing because she wants to, and she can because it's pain-free. Yeah, that's awesome. What else can you tell us about her? Like, you've had some gut microbiome issues.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So again, thank God for SF Raw. Every time my dog was in the ER, the first person I called was Casey. I called her before I called my wife. So something else for us to, again, understand. And we should also discuss that I took your nutrition course, and this is how I learned all this.
Yeah.
But something to also understand is every time your dog goes on antibiotics, it's going to wipe out all the healthy bacteria in the stomach. And then it's very prone to have bad bacteria grow back. Right. So at one point, my dog got a foxtail in her vagina. Ugh. I said the word vagina so many times that month. And again, Casey was the first person I contacted. What was really difficult about that was that I pulled it out of her. Like, she kept messing with herself, and I pulled it out, but then she kept licking herself. It took me 3 ER visits before they discovered there was an eyelash worth of foxtail still in there.
Oh my gosh.
So it was this horrible traumatic experience, and she had to go on antibiotics. And Casey was amazing and helped me come up with the probiotic regimen. But again, here's the problem. The probiotic pills were huge. And my dog, again, all the food issues we've had, all the health issues we've had,
right.
We were able to get the probiotics in her for the foxtail. So we were able to get through that, but it was really difficult. It was really hard because, again, toy breeds are tiny and those pills are huge. So I followed everything that Casey said for the foxtails and the antibiotics, or for the antibiotics for the foxtails. And we did an animal biome and the gut was balanced. So that was amazing. And again, I couldn't without Casey. So, and then about 4 months later, my client's dog attacked her and it was awful. We didn't see it coming. And again, that's on Instagram. We don't have to talk about it. But the attack was so traumatic for me. And I was so concerned with pain meds and sutures and flushing drains that I completely dropped the ball on probiotics and I just couldn't deal. And again, this is everything I want everyone to understand. When you're drowning, you just got to try to tread water. You just need someone to throw you a life jacket. And again, I couldn't deal. So that's been, again, another part of my problem is every time everything falls apart, I can't deal with trying to get her to eat different stuff or intermittent fasting or anything. So that was March. In the summer, she started itching a lot. And I was like, oh, crap. So again, I didn't want to deal. In August, I ran the animal biome and she had a massive Clostridium outbreak. Massive. I contacted you crying and I call animal biome crying. And so that is when we start adding, again, because everything you want is to add fiber and vegetables to try to, change what the microbiome, what we're feeding. And we did and then also animal biome, you can buy fecal transplant pills. And again, I'm enlisting Casey and we're doing psyllium husk. And I ran the test again and it really hasn't budged. So I do have a better population of happy bacteria than I did because they were gone. Yeah. And that's what was devastating was that, in December, it was amazing. And in 6 months it was gone. So we're right now almost at the end of our next round of fecal transplant pills. Also, this time Animal Biome had me add Espelardi, but also this time around, I was able to say, what is the minimum amount of Espelardi I can give? And so that was the other thing was me just taking the time to explain to someone, this pill is freaking huge.
Yeah. And Espelardi is a probiotic, just so people understand.
Yeah, that's the yeast. Yeah. Right. And again, you can talk about that. But anyway, so that's where we are now. But again, I couldn't have done this without you and SF Raw. And this is, again, now when I do an intake for a new client, I ask them, what is your dog's medical history? Have you had ER visits? Have they had antibiotics? And then I ask them, does your dog have allergies? Does your dog scratch? Does your dog? And I have given up keeping track of the number of clients whose dog have an imbalanced gut.
Yeah. So as a trainer, how important is that?
So the gut is responsible for most of your immune system and most of the happy chemicals in your brain.
That brain chemistry, right?
Yeah. So it's serotonin, basically.
Right.
So, and again, like we keep every month, there's a new study that comes out about, the gut, brain axis. And I've again given up keeping track of the dogs that have imbalanced guts, but I can also say that my dog is still itching. So I don't think I'm still there yet. And Casey has said it's absolutely normal for a dog to take a year to rebuild.
And I think that that's something that is so important to hear you say, that here you are feeding the dog a species appropriate diet and everything's going great. And then a major traumatic stress hits. And what happens, the antibiotics, but not just the antibiotics, the stress itself. I mean, she had a major traumatic injury. And yes, it's going to take a long time. The one of the cats we have on the property had a very, very similar injury she was attacked by a pit bull and had the drains and all of that. It took almost 10 months for her to be back to normal. And that's just with feeding raw and all that. So yeah, this isn't an overnight thing. And I think that's something we need to encourage people to understand, and that you have to be persistent and it has to be slow. This isn't stuff that you can just throw everything at once and think it's all going to go away. You have to do it one step at a time, take it nice and slow, and just be diligent.
Yeah. Yeah. And also too, I think, I don't know if you guys said it at the conference or Casey said it, or, a lot of times when your dog doesn't like something, take a break and then figure out what they like. So for example, so I'm now making, these little meatballs for the dog. And so, the batch starts with 600 grams of muscle meat. So that's about 10 days worth. And this time I put in 15 grams of vegetable and I put in some fish. because sometimes, and again, like she's weirdest dog. She won't eat baby food. She won't eat small oily fish. But, we put in I think I put in 50 grams of salmon this time. So I'm just starting to edge. But I think a lot of times, like when I always tell people when I was trying to feed the dog raw, I think it was like trying to convince a kid that sushi is food.
Yeah.
I created this food phobia, But like I said, my wife, literally, we can be like eating scrambled eggs and I'll be like, do you want some of this? And she's like, no. And then my wife will be like, do you want some of mine? And she's like, sure.
That's amazing.
And this dog, like we're BFFs.
Right.
This is what I try to explain to people is that, so think about if you're on Facebook and you ask for movie recommendations. And if someone tells you to watch a movie and you love it, you're going to trust their advice. Yeah. And then you're going to get to the point where you just watch what they tell you without even researching.
Exactly.
Because they give you good advice. I gave my dog terrible advice. So on that topic, the other trainer I want to give a shout out to is Kim Brophy. Because Kim Brophy has something called Talk Like Mr. Rogers. And so it's, again, thinking about, all the stress that my dog has been through. My dog has been attacked once by my client dog that landed us in the ER, but twice we've been attacked on the beach. Didn't see it coming. So it's understanding, again, I spend my life trying to protect the public from my client dogs. And now I spend the rest of my day trying to protect my dog from the public. So Talk Like Mr. Rogers is acknowledging your dog's experience, but it doesn't mean you have to feed them. So being in San Francisco, it's very crowded. It's very stressful. And that's a person, that's a car, and I see a dog. So for example, this morning, my dog saw a woman in the distance carrying a bag. My dog thought it was a bag. My dog thought it was another dog. Dogs have terrible vision. I mean, you can read different stuff, but I think in the immense world, I think it said, it's possible they only have focus of 20 feet.
Oh, wow.
So you and I are team vision. They are team smelling and hearing.
Right.
So what we can see at 50 feet, I think they can see at 20. I mean, it's awful.
Right.
So anyway, so I looked and I said, oh no, that's a person. She looked at me and then she's like, oh, okay. So it took about a year, but my dog has 50 phrases. So it's understanding that when the fire truck goes by, you point it out and you say, that's a car. When a kid goes by in a skateboard, that's a person. And then I'll say, I see a dog. So consequently, I am team vision for my dog. And again, the toy breeds, first of all, they can't see, but they're down on the ground.
Right. So far down there.
You and I are that situational awareness. But then I'll ask her, well, what do you want to do? And it's not just in the beginning, you just ask them what you don't have a kid show up at your house and say, what do you want for dinner?
Right. But
you just make them dinner. And then after you've made them dinner for a few weeks, you can say, okay, you now know the repertoire here. Do you want a hamburger or a hot dog? And then the kid may say, oh, but can you make mac and cheese? Oh, right. We had that last week. So part of it is you teach the dog the choices. Okay. And then you start asking them what makes you feel better. And that food is not the answer to most of these questions. Most of my dog's anxiety is, are we going to meet that dog? And so she has 3 coping strategies. We could see a dog and be like, do you want to go the other way? And often she's like, yeah, we're fine. Let's do that. But sometimes she's like, I'm a little worried about that dog. But it doesn't mean she wants to eat. It's kind of like thinking about if you're sitting in a restaurant and your ex-boss walks in. Yeah. Awkward. So how do you want your family to keep you busy and distracted so you don't have to acknowledge they're there? And then you want them to pay the bill so you can get out the back door. You want them to run interference. It doesn't mean that we're just shoving food at you, but we're keeping you busy. So often my dog will be like, I'm worried about that other dog. Can we do a trick? Can we play up? And then sometimes it is, I actually think that dog is unstable and I would like you to pick me up. And then she will put her paws on my knee and then I will hold her. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, I see that dog. And then we might move out of the way or whatever. And then I'll be like, oh, there they go. Massive, massive reduction in anxiety. Because when we identify what brings the dog relief, it is self-reinforcing.
Nice.
And so that is the other part, is that food should not be transactional.
But I've seen you in your videos toss a bunch of food off.
So sometimes, so part of it can be, do you want to play a game? Go. So it's understanding that often the ability to create distance and move away from something is what matters.
Okay.
So it is understanding that when you get an adrenaline burst, that tells your body to hit the gas. And so games are often like, I need to help you. So you play the games first. You play Go, where you throw the treat and the dog chases a treat. But over time, the dog starts realizing, I can step off to the side. I don't need your food.
Okay.
And so it's really thinking about, we have to teach our dogs how they can solve their own problems.
Right.
And that
Right.
often food is not the answer. And again, often my dog will be like, I need some food. But again, it's the same way if you're like, I need a little bit more social support. But often the ability to move away. And I always tell people, think about COVID. You know, when did you start going out in public?
Mm-hmm.
What were the activities you did? Did you ever go to a party where you realized you didn't feel safe and you left?
Right.
And if you go there and no one's got a mask on and they're like, you're fine. If you don't trust them, you
Right.
don't want to go out with them. And that's what I think. I think we've really lost sight of what is the dog's version of safety. And again, the toy breed, we're walking squirrels.
Right.
Let's
Right.
face it, a 30-pound dog could kill my dog.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than us saying they're Napoleons and all this stuff, let's
Right.
acknowledge we are asking a dog to go out into a wildly unstable environment. You need some backup.
And compassion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with her repertoire then of being a toy breed, and you need to feed her this, raw diet, or not in her case, the fresh food diet. What is your takeaway? Like, how do you encourage other toy breed owners with not being afraid of overfeeding, not being afraid of of causing issues with deficiencies? What advice can you give them? Because I think it is intimidating.
Yeah. I think one thing that was helpful, I bought a scale off Amazon for postal packages. So it's about this big. So I'm able to weigh the dog pretty easily. So that is helpful. So having a scale for the dog.
Okay.
And then having a scale for the food. And when you guys remember, and that was the thing, remember I told you, I'm like, this whole like 0.003 ounces.
Right. Go to grams.
You convert it to grams, please. And so part of it is just really understanding, how to just get in the habit of weighing the food.
Okay.
But it's also understanding that a duck gizzard is amazing. And you can chop that up into 13. So, like I literally have tweezers where I will have 2 bowls of food. I will have the bowl of the ounce of chopped gizzards, and then I will have a second bowl. And when we're doing stuff, I can like use the tweezers and pick up one piece and put it in the other bowl, and then she can eat it out of that.
Wow. So
it's also understanding that, it's a pain in the neck, but you know what? You don't have to be cheap with your dog. You can go in and be like, oh, they've got, lamb lung today. Oh, you can be really, really expensive habits with your dog because they don't need that much.
Right. Because it's so little.
Fun. And I
so
say,
that's a huge plus.
Buy a dehydrator. Buy a dehydrator. So for example, and again, it's up to you, but like I bought a bag of 18 duck feet from Casey. It cost me $6. 18 duck feet. Dehydrate them. You go to a store, duck feet are $2 each.
Yeah.
So my 18 duck feet cost me $6.
Yeah.
So again, and then you have them in the freezer. I don't dehydrate the shelf stable. I don't. But I just have, and then I have stasher bags in the freezer. I'm not doing plastic anymore. But, I went to Casey and I'm like, I want a trachea. And then also buy garden shears. Garden shears are really good. Because again, so like in the beginning, she was like, I don't know. Again, she wasn't chewing on she wasn't chewing on the chicken feet, but I took the kitchen shears and I cut them up and then I made little treats out of that. And that's the other thing is that, again, you can experiment with your dog and it doesn't have to cost that much.
Right.
So buy garden shears to cut stuff up. And then if you're feeling spendy, get the sous vide machine, because the sous vide machine means that I can cook stuff without,
destroying. Right. You're not destroying any of the
nutrients.
Right.
And again, experiment.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing about the toy breed, and again, I wrote an article last month. I've got one client that's, her dog will eat strawberries. Another client, the dog will eat watermelon. But also, my dog will be like, I want your yogurt. And then when the bowl is almost empty, just being able to lick a little bit of yogurt. Because this is the other thing. Food is social. If you came to my house for dinner and I made you dinner and I didn't eat it, that would be weird. But we do with our dogs all the time. We give them this food and they say, oh, it's good. No, it's garbage half the time. And let's also remember too, your treats, there is no regulation about treats because they don't have to be nutritionally complete. Mm-hmm. So who knows what's in those treats? So I love buying gizzards and I boil them. And again, I keep them in the freezer. And again, go to your Asian market, go to your ethnic market, go to, 99 Ranch 99, whatever it is, and buy some hearts, cook them up, see if your dog likes them.
Yeah.
You can't lose. And again, you don't have to use a lot of food, but also the calculator. The calculator was so helpful, but it was so much better when you put it into grams, because I was like,
I know. And I think that worked out really well for a lot of people, because having these toy breeds, which, those of us that don't, we until I met, when you and I talked about it and I met other people with the toy breeds, I did not appreciate the difficulty it was to feed these toy breeds a fresh diet, because, with the kibble, yeah, you just give them a little bit, but I never even thought about those tiny amounts that you give them. And so it is really interesting. And people, they'll say, well, what happens if we want to give an egg? Where does that come off on the calculator? With a dog like mine, it doesn't really matter. Like, she can have that egg today. That's almost the full amount of food for her entire day if you give her a raw egg. So there's a huge difference in how to deal with these toy breeds.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, when we talk about feeding the dog in front of you, is so important, because you wouldn't have any, you can't just do any of these generalizations when you have a toy breed like that.
No.
And again, with your dog, you had to really figure out what she would eat and how to prepare it.
Yeah.
And that's
again, I've never had
important.
a dog like this. I've never had a dog like this. I've never met a dog that doesn't like baby food. There was one time when she was at the ER, she had a false pregnancy, and she had a horrible IBD incident. And that was actually how I started Animal Biome. One of my other trainer friends told me to do it. But they wouldn't release her because she wouldn't eat baby food. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I came down and I had, just some boiled chicken, and she ate that. And they're like, oh my gosh, she hates me. But this is, again, we make this assumption,
right, that
if you don't like this, or again, I make this assumption that if you're not chewing this, you don't like it. No, she didn't chew because her teeth hurt.
Right. And
then you start looking at street dogs, and then you start looking at Sindor Pongal, who's out in India, and she runs Barks and BHARCS. And I had the privilege of having dinner with her. She was in San Francisco visiting her family, and she's telling me about the street dogs, and that the street dogs go through people's trash and they decide whose trash they like. But she also really emphasized that India doesn't do a lot of preserved food. She's like, we're making 3 meals from scratch. So she's like, often our garbage is better than your kibble.
Right.
When the dogs like a family's trash, they will try to get them to sponsor them. Try to adopt them.
They adopt that family.
Yeah. And then I made the assumption, so all the carnivores are super popular. And she's like, not necessarily. She said, a lot of them really like lentils. And then you got to think about it. She's like, and Alisha, she's like, we're cooking with onions. They're eating onions. So it's, again, and I'm not saying to give your dog onions.
No.
But it's just understanding that all these, look at all the work that you guys have done to help people realize that garlic is an option.
Right.
And that it's just, again, understanding. And again, I'm not saying eat onions, but it's just understanding that we have this idea that dogs eat dog food and we eat human food. And that, to me, just starts moving into colonialism and racism,
and this doesn't make sense. We've said it in other occasions, but no other medical profession is telling you to eat ultra processed food. And yet veterinary medicine, they're telling their clients to feed their dog ultra processed food, the same ultra processed food, day in and day out for their entire life. And there's such a disconnect there. And that's all we're trying to do, is get people to understand that that is not the way to feed dogs. Dogs need fresh food just like people. And there's so many ways to feed the fresh food that depends on your dog and exactly what works for you and your dog. But the bottom line is we need fresh food in those bowls.
Yeah. And again, I think the ancestral diet is great. And again, we're gonna work it out. But it was mind blowing to me to realize 75% of the dogs on this planet are street dogs, and they don't have kibble, and they don't have clickers, and they don't have reactivity. So why do we have this idea? I almost feel like it's like with Purina and the food, I almost feel like it's like OxyContin running the pain trials. That, it's like, it's the only way you can do this. And I feel like they've said it so many times. Oh, kibble cleans your teeth. And again, every week you guys are myth busting about the rice. And even then with the rice, we're still seeing people say, give them rice. And again, it's exhausting. And
It
it's
is,
exhausting to
but
fight.
that's our mission.
Yeah. It's exhausting to be like, oh, but my vet said this. And I'm like, can you just think about, again, like
Right.
what kind of fresh food? So again, it's really trying to give people ideas. So again, the article I wrote was not get your dog off kibble, but it was, what fresh food does your dog like?
Right.
So start small.
Absolutely.
Small.
And that's a great message to end with, is that we're not saying that dogs have to be 100% on fresh, although that's ideal, but get fresh food into that bowl and figure out how to work with it within what your dog likes, figure out their likes and dislikes. Like I said, the dog here, she does not like vegetables. Carrots, yes, because they're sweet, but I don't consider that the vegetable I want her to eat. And you work with it. And so she gets fur instead for her fiber, and you figure out what works for your dog. So on that note, with the Feed Real Institute, you said that you took our course. Yes. And that you do have your CPCN certification. Yes. And so you feel like that was a big help with your journey?
I think the big light bulb, I mean, all of it was amazing. I'm going to be honest. I came in thinking, I don't know. I was skeptical. I was so skeptical. I was like, I'll do it for Kay. But I was like, oh my God. I think the thing that to me blew my mind was the amylase. So the fact that when we as humans start chewing and digestion starts in the mouth, and that amylase breaks down carbs. When I learned that the only amylase the dog has is in the pancreas, and that the only reason why it's a little bit of a genetic mutation, but it's really about being able, the mutation came about because they ate a lot more human food, but it's also realizing that it was more about if they ate, the bird, and then they ate the contents of the gut. And again, Tim Lewis, great dog biologist, biologist that studies dogs. Tim has pointed out that some dogs through domestication have more ability to break down, more amylase. But at the end of the day, learning that they don't have amylase in their saliva, learning that their GI tract is really short, that they're not cows, they shouldn't be fermenting food, they shouldn't be. That's the other thing. I hate walking in someone's house and there's a bowl of kibble in the kitchen.
Yeah, I know.
Our dogs are not grazers. So really understanding why we feed them concise meals, why we, again, are doing muscle meat, why we, again, are trying to have the fish for the omega-3s and the fiber. And so that, to me, what was really important was just learning that we need to feed our dogs fresh food so that we're not putting strain on their bodies.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The carbohydrate overload is what's causing so many problems, and their pancreas has to work so hard. So no wonder you can't train them. Their mind is so messed up from everything else going on.
All the inflammation in their body. And then you start asking, is the food reinforcing?
Yeah.
Does the food, oh, hello. Would you like to come say hi? Come here. You want to come say hi? All right.
Meet this.
There
she is.
So
she's adorable.
She is hilarious. And
she's so adorable.
She's hilarious. Yeah. And so, she's got, we've got some weight loss to work on. So you and I are working on that. Because again, just all the food I threw. And then I also had like broken toes this year, so I wasn't walking as much. But again, this is what I really value. And this is what, you and Casey and everyone else, we all need more help. And the only solution to chronic stress is social support. So
I was just going to say, it's the support we need, the support we give each other, knowing that there's somebody there that you can reach out to. But so great.
Thank you for getting Civetta off kibble. Thank you for getting Lada off kibble. And that's the other thing. Our wife used to joke that the cat slept 23 and a half hours a day. And the cat is so much more active, and she follows us around the house now, and she chats with us. And we thought that she was just, and it's because she was eating freaking whatever kibble, royal.
Well, and you talk about an animal that can't have carbohydrate, and they're an obligate carnivore. They don't even have that little bit of amylase coming in, that it blows me away that cats are on such high carbohydrate diets, but that's a whole different topic. So, well, great. I really appreciate you coming on. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah. So my Instagram is AJArdiana, ARDIANA. My website is Empawthy. So that's EMPAWTHY. So it's empathy for pets and their people. And my Facebook is just me chatting with my friends, so don't
Yeah.
bother that. But pretty much every day on Instagram. And again, what I do is active avoidance. We see dogs, we play games, dogs go away. We see people, we play games, people go away. And it's just thinking about if you were hiking and if you saw a coyote in the distance, you wait and see which way it's going. And then if it's coming closer, you move. So it's really understanding that I'm really trying to ask the dog what brings you joy. And then when you're stressed, what makes you feel better? And yeah, and I don't really do virtual training because what I've seen is I need to be in person with you.
Yeah.
Like I've done it for a while and I'm like, no, I want to see the dog. But you know, and I love helping people live in harmony with their dogs. That's what matters.
I love that they live in harmony with their dogs. They're not training their dogs. They're learning to live cooperatively.
You know, we're raising, you know, Denise Menzie says we're raising them. We're not training them.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Just like kids.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
great. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure we will connect again soon.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.